everybody. Thank you for listening in to the Scouser
and the Scot. Today we have the one, the only Adam Gregory from Bloodstock. Adam, can you give us a bit of an insight into yourself, your involvement in the music industry, and how it all started?
Right. Well, we're 20 years as a festival this year, or now next year, so it's a long one. But I started out initially just as a sort of general dog's body running around in an idea that my dad had. He was out at the pub one day and having a few drinks with friends opposite, at that time was opposite the assembly rooms, and he sort of said, there's no way you can go to listen to rock or heavy metal or anything else like that. And then one of his friends, and they've been drinking all day, so you've got to sort of set the scene. One of his friends just said, you should start a festival. And look, walked over to the assembly rooms and just booked the venue for the following year for a one-day show without a clue what he was going to do or how he was going to do it. But at that time, he was doing a lot of album covers for bands. So he was working, at that time, done a few for Saxon. Been doing Saxon album covers since 1984. So he just phoned Biff and said, do me a favour. I'm doing this show next year. Will you headline it for me? And Biff, he's like, yeah, all right. It was one of those. We didn't pay him much, to be fair. I don't think we paid him at all, to be honest, but he did it as a favour. And it kind of started from that. So my first few years were generally, I picked up Nightwish in the back of my car, from when they first played in 2003, from the airport and took them back to the hotel, just running around doing general stuff. My sisters were doing merch, but we had no clue what we were doing. It was just a bit of a fun day out. That was about it. And then since then, we've kind of learned a couple of things along the way. And we are here today. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, it is a huge success story. When I came into the music industry and the management side of things, a lot of the bands that I started working with, the first question they say, can you get us on Bloodstock? And I'm like, I think we have a bit of work to do before we get to that stage, guys, but let's try for it. So, obviously the success has come. Can you explain, Adam, as a director of the company now, what your specific role is within the organisation, please?
Well, I think we're kind of a bit of an anomaly when it comes to business because we're a family. So there's myself, my two sisters and my dad that we all kind of do bits and bobs. Vicky's got a very defined role where she's booking the bands. Rachel's sort of doing a lot of the back end stuff, so she doesn't tend to get out in the forefront like I do or Vicky does. And I'm doing a lot of the sort of the marketing, the sponsorship, and sort of the business engagements, if you like, sort of fall on my side. And then I help Rachel a lot with the back end. So, licensing, all the meetings with security and suppliers and sort of the general running. So over the weekend itself, it's myself and Rachel that generally tends to be in the office, locked behind a desk, not seeing a great deal. And then Vicky just goes out there swanning it and trying to play Lord of the Manor or Lady of the Manor. So it's all boring stuff, to be fair, but it's spreadsheets and making decisions that people don't like. And Rachel usually says no to stuff, so it's me, her battling her. And then myself and Vicky do a lot of the online profiling. So that's very, very important now as well, with social media being as prevalent as it is to have a good online profile. So we try and do a lot of work around that. So that's kind of really what we do.
Cool. That's pretty cool. Like we've been just discussing, the history of it is pretty epic. Like you say, 20 years next year.
Yeah.
It's like, it's evolved from an indoor festival right the way to what I class as the one of the main festivals in the UK. But and you started off small and you've grown, and it has grown. It's known throughout the rock and music industry as one of the best festivals out there. And my personal opinion is I love it. I can't get enough of it. A lot of people I know, we sort it out.
Yeah.
How can you improve it, Adam? How can you take it to the next steps? What is in the future for Bloodstock?
Bloodstock sets itself aside from a lot of festivals, we think, purely based on the feel that fans get when they arrive, and not just fans, but the crew and everybody that works with us. There's a very family feel when you arrive.
Right.
And I don't mean lots of 2.4 children families running around, and we get a lot of kids, but it's just that you feel welcoming, you feel at home. Our view is if we get much bigger than we are, we could lose that, and that could get very diluted, and that would be damaging to the festival. We don't want to be, a Download, a Reading, a Leeds, or anything else like that size. They do that, and they do that excellently. They do it brilliantly, you know, and we leave them to that. Where we see ourselves is that more of a niche market where we can control and manage and have our hands on everything. So, you know, although we employ lots of different people to do lots of different things, myself and Rachel and Vicky and you know, my dad, we're sort of around and doing stuff all over the weekend, you know, keeping on top of everything. So, you know, we'll go into the campsites, we go into the car parks, you know, we do all the boring stuff that you know, people don't want to be walking around a car park on a Saturday afternoon. We do that to make sure it's secure, there's staff in there, people are parking properly, and, you know, the vehicles are safe when they're being left. The mundane stuff. So I think being able to touch everything comes at a price and comes at a cost. So I think for Bloodstock's involvement, we've probably got room to go to 25,000 where we are, and I think we'd be happy at that. We'd cap it at that. We don't want to be any bigger, because then you're also playing in a different pool of bands, where you've got to be headline driven, because, you know, you're competing against the bigger festivals at that point, and people become very sort of aware of only 3 bands or 4 bands that are playing that festival that weekend, and there are your 4 headliners. You know, we want Bloodstock to be the headliner. We want every band to sort of have a draw, every band to be important, you know, and that's right the way from New Blood, Jaeger, Sophie, all the way up to the Ronnie James Dio stage. So having that good mix of quality, I think, is important.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think one of the strengths that you guys have, you know what your mission is, you know what you're trying to achieve, and you stick to it, and you've grown that exponentially over the years. But interest, I mean, from your perspective, can you give me some idea of what the best bits about being involved in Bloodstock is, and obviously some of the worst bits as well?
You know, the best bit for me is seeing fans. You know, I don't get me wrong, I've met a lot of bands over the years, and you know, people that I've grown up listening to that have been, you know, my icons from when I was as sort of a teenager and growing up. You know, and you sort of see them in the flesh, and they're generally really nice people and everything else. But that's not the pinnacle for me. The pinnacle is being able to go onto the stage, and, you know, stand at the side and just watch the fans enjoy themselves, and knowing that you've been responsible for that feeling and that emotion. You know, because life's about creating memories. You know, and we're in a brilliant position, and I'm very, very humbled, as we all are, to be in a position where we can create those memories, those "do you remember when" sort of moments that people will talk about for years. And there's been some amazing ones. So as a great moment for me, I think that stands out above anything else over the weekend itself. The bum twitchy moments tend to be when things don't work or don't arrive. I mean, we had it a few years ago. I think it was Wednesday morning, and we got a phone call about the Sophie stage and the New Blood stage. They weren't coming. The company that was supplying them had a major meltdown or whatever it was, and I think they double booked, and quite simply, we had no stage, and it was kind of 18 hours until we were due to open the doors. So it's like, well, wow, what do you do? And it to be fair, it was very surreal and very calming. Nobody was really screaming and shouting and panicking. People called people who knew different people, and I've got to say, within 12 hours, we had a new stage, 2 new stages, lighting, PAs, and everything actually en route. And I think we got everything up and running probably about 40 minutes before we opened the doors. So that was quite interesting. So we have moments like that, but from a fan's perspective, they don't see it. So, you know, they just see that it's that swan analogy, isn't it, where it's very sort of serene and regal on top, but underneath it's paddling like the clappers. So
we used to call moments like that in the military brown adrenaline moments.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have those. We have those. You know, we've had it where you know, a band will turn up and you know, they're early or whatever, and the dressing rooms aren't ready, and you know, some bands can be a bit emotional about that. I think a lot of them tend to be all right, but it's only when they've sort of not kind of stuck to the schedules that we've been talking about that it goes awry from that perspective. But they're few and far between.
But like you say, with all this going on, as I say, you've got a great team. It sounds like obviously there's a lot which happens behind the scenes. There's a lot of work which goes on.
Yeah, but it's not just us. It's having a good team around you.
Oh, so, 100%.
You know, Showset we work with, SC Productions that we work with for many, many years, DJ Catering, and these we don't change a lot of stuff. So everything that we sort of have on site has kind of been there for a long, long time. And what it enables us to do at that point then is look at it every year and tweak it. and make it a bit better. You know, we didn't like the way that worked this year. Okay, well, let's change it. Let's shake it up a little bit. You know, and it's all about that fan feedback. So we scan religiously the Facebooks and the forums and everything else. We send out a survey after the festival as well, asking for the fans for honest feedback. You know, and it's you get a lot of criticism, which is, I think, it's human nature to be critical. But we look at it as a constructive element of how we get that feedback. You know, we get a far more positive than we do negative. I'll just say that. You know, on sort of pretty much every aspect of the event. But we look at the negatives more importantly, because that allows us to sort of grow and develop. So, you know, it's important that we do analyze that feedback as comprehensively as we can.
So, as you say, like, you know what I mean, everyone's working as a team, everyone's working close together. From your perspective, do you ever actually get to enjoy Bloodstock? Because you run it, obviously it's your business, it's your job, you're working around, you're doing security. You actually have downtime where you can go, I want to watch that band.
We try to. I mean, usually, because I've got an earpiece in, same as Rachel has, and Vicky won't wear one because she just says that, you know, if she wants me, they'll see my shoes or whatever it will be. So she, you know, she kind of does that. But as much as I'd love to say yes, we watch every band, we honestly don't, and it's because we can't. We have a screen in the office, which again, when there aren't people sort of flying in and out with different questions and queries, you can sort of have a few minutes to sort of have a look. But we like to try and, if there's a specific band that I want to see, I will try and get 2 or 3 songs in. But they don't happen very often. You know, we do get caught out the front, but usually they're 1 or 2 songs. You get a radio call and you've got to shoot off and go and help with something or whatever it may be at the time. But it's, you know, the whole thing for me, as much as people say, well, you know, that can't be enjoyable, it is. Putting the event on is enjoyable. As hard work as it is, and I mean, we are, come Sunday night, or actually come Friday night, we're exhausted because we've probably been there a week and a bit already. You know, sort of doing a lot of the stuff sort of behind the scenes. So by the time the festival starts, we've probably been there 5 days. And then we've got, as it will be next year, another 5 days, plus the cleanup on top of that as well. So by the time you've finished, you literally don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to move. You just want to lie down and not wake up for about 3 days. So it is a bit exhausting, but it's fun. It's great fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, what I'd like to move on to now, because obviously the people that are watching this, we're aiming this quite a lot at the grassroots level, the new bands, the young musicians, the people who are coming into the music industry, and they need this kind of insight into it. And I think one of the key things, or one of the first things I ever learned coming into the music industry 2.5 years ago, was about metal to the masses. And a lot of the bands I worked with, especially the more metal bands, that was very much their focus, trying to get onto that, trying to get through. So I paid a lot of attention to it in the early days. So can you tell us a little bit about how it came about, and what the views, what the idea was about metal to the masses?
Yeah, well, that was my dad. You know, Paul. He's very, very passionate about encouraging the next tier, and not just in music, in everything. So, you know, whether it's artistic or musical or science, whatever it might be, you know, the next generation is going to take us forward. And, you know, he's very aware, as we all are, that a lot of these bands that are touring now are sort of getting very much to their end of cycles. And there aren't really any massive new, I've got to see bands that sort of have really stood out. There's great bands, don't get me wrong, there are some amazing bands. But when you say, you know, how many bands are the next Beatles, the next Maiden, the next Metallica, you know, the next Slipknot or whatever else, it's very, very difficult to pinpoint them and say, you know, watch those. There's Partway Drive, for argument's sake, you know, amazing band live last year. You know, I think they're ones to watch. But when it comes to that next tier, we've always thought it's extremely difficult for certainly metal acts and hard rock bands to find that pedestal up to the next level of sort of playing in local pubs and shows and things like that, because generally the public don't see them. Because if you look at your X Factors and all these crappy programs on TV, they're all circled and cycled around manufactured bands that are going to make Simon Cowell & Co. a ton of money. You know, and it's well, the kids will love this because it's, you know, it's popular or whatever it may be. You know, it's not talent, and it's all auto-tuned and pre-recorded. It's just crap, in my opinion. Whereas I think a lot of metal and rock bands is real music. These are real musicians with real talent that can play instruments, that can actually sing. I mean, you look at Ginger, for argument's sake, as a singer. You know, what a voice! What a voice that she has in that band. You know, it can go from something very soft and melodic into super heavy and growly. You know, and I think to have a talent like that needs to be nurtured and needs to be supported. So in the early years, we had a stage in the assembly rooms that was the sort of second stage that Paul wanted to sort of be that pedestal to finding new bands. And initially, it started out where we contacted a few venues, sort of a north, south, Midlands type thing, and sort of tried to sort of nurture the next tier of bands. But the problem at that time was the sort of the pay-to-plays and all this type of crap that was floating around was very, very dirty. And the Battle of the Bands type competitions, people hated, because you had, as a band, you had to sell tickets, or you had to pay money, or whatever it would be. And it wasn't about the band, it wasn't about the music, it was all about the promoter making a buck. And I think it became, at that point, very, very clear to us that it needed to change. So Paul decided that he wanted to start Metal to the Masses. He wanted it to be transparent. He wanted it to support the bands. There had to be zero ask from the bands other than put on a show. You know, we don't expect you to sell tickets. We don't expect you to sort of pay us any money or anything else. You've got to just get to the venue and do your thing. So that took a long time to break the mold of what had been in the past with all the Battle of Bands competitions. And it was finding that trust, which we had to sort of spend a few years doing. Simon Hall came on board, and I have to say to Simon, he's done an amazing job with Metal to the Masses. You know, he's been to all of the finals, and he's worked with all of the venues. He works with the bands, and we've made sure that over a long period of time, it's become a transparent program. There are always people that think, well, I should have won that. That's not fair. I was cheated. But the judging is done by Simon, and it's done by the venues, and it's not done by how many people you bring in that are going to cheer and clap for you, because it's evident when bands do turn up that they've brought a horde of fans, which is brilliant. They've got a following, but it's very much around how that band performs on that day, on that final. You know, how they are musically and everything else. And on a bigger scale, would they be received well? Will the fans enjoy it? And it's been good, because over the years, we've seen bands that have gone through the competition 2, 3, 4, even 5 times over the years, because they haven't made it the first year. Then they've ended up making it through to the Metal to the Masses and actually played at Bloodstock. And they've been so humble and so appreciative of the opportunity. You know, it's very much around giving them the opportunity, giving them the platform. So we invite them to, you know, talk to the press, you know, sell themselves. There's your platform, there's your stage, backline, everything's all provided. All you've got to do is turn up and play. You know, we'll promote you and all that type of stuff, and then we'll put you in front of the press and sell yourselves. And there's been some good stories out of it. You know, we've had, you know, as they're called, the house band, the Evil Scarecrow, for argument's sake, as people call them. You know, they've sort of come from the unsigned scene and have done incredibly well. You know, then there's a lot of bands that this year we're looking at now with the extra day. We're putting elevating some of these other bands onto other stages that have come through Metal to the Masses. So it's a big focus for us, and it's an important one.
Obviously, me speaking personally, I've been involved in a couple of the different Metal to the Masses as well. Like, so I think from our perspective, it's one of the most successful things to be involved and have an opportunity to play a festival.
Yeah, brilliant.
Outdoor festival where you can mingle with your idols, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
From your perspective, how successful is it from your perspective? Like, you know, do you see the crowds wanting to go to the Metal to the Masses stage?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always busy. The Metal to the Masses, you know, which is the Hobgoblin New Blood stage, it's now been called. You know, Hobgoblin sort of saw the value in supporting this unsigned music scene as well, because it's something that's dear to our hearts, and for the future of music needs to be supported. You know, Simon does call it the heartbeat of the festival, and I can't disagree with him. You know, because it is a critical part of what we do and what Bloodstock's about. And you know, let's be honest, we want new music. The fans themselves crave it. You know, they love to discover a new band that, you know, that they didn't expect to see. They'll buy a ticket based on the headliners and probably a dozen or so, you know, bands across the festival weekend. But when there's a band on that they don't, you know, that's not their thing, they do wander into the New Blood tent. And you know, the feedback we've had has been amazing to say, you know, I can't believe this band of you know, in the New Blood, never heard them before. I'm buying the merch, I'm buying the albums, or, you know, we'll download the music, whatever it may be. And it's good that fans can discover something new, something fresh. So for us, we'd never be without it. You know, there's a lot of work going along at the moment. We're doing some sort of work behind the scenes to promote and support Metal to the Masses, because it's quite a critical thing. So we've got a few plans afoot at the moment, which will be revealed in a few weeks, that is built around Metal to the Masses. Now we can look to support that in the coming months as well. So, sorry. So yeah, so it's critical. Basically, it's critical. It's critical.
I think that's one thing that sets you apart from other festivals that are smaller than you and ones who are about your size or bigger, is that you quite clearly see it as part of the mission to bring the next generation through. And from the perspective that we're involved in, Ian and I, then that's so, you know, that's fresh. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we want to do as well. And I think that sets you apart. So you've touched on it briefly just before, Adam, about bands that go into Metal to the Masses. So if you had to give some advice to the guys and the girls that are watching this who may want to do that and they want to be successful, can you give any pointers as to what you would say they should look at doing?
Personally, I would say go to shows. You know, look at other bands. Don't just sort of go to you know, the big shows. Go to some of these smaller shows. Go to Metal to the Masses, or go to other gigs that are happening. And you know, when eventually they do start happening again, get out there and see what other people are doing. You know, and pinch the ideas or mold ideas or mold things that you've seen. Have an identity, but most importantly, don't give up. You know, it's not easy, and no one's going to pretend that it is easy. But those bands that are tenacious, that put themselves about, I mean, there's a band from Ireland called Dead Label. You may or may not have heard of them. Dan and Claire and the band, amazing band, but they're all very much self-promoted, and they are so tenacious with everything that they do. They put themselves out there. They're always sort of knocking on the door, always talking, always chatting. And I think it's critically important to make sure that as a band, don't expect anything just to be handed to you. You know, you go to a show and bands walk away thinking, yeah, we played the show right, you know, everything will come rolling in. It doesn't. You know, and it's the same with a festival. It doesn't just happen. You have to work hard. And those bands that do work hard will at some point get the rewards. You know, it's not always going to happen. I'd love to say it always, you know, every band will always succeed. They won't. But, you know, you won't succeed if you don't try. And I think the important thing is to give it 110% and just keep going. You know, and if you have a knockback, pick yourself up, dust yourself down, ask for feedback. You know, how can we be better? How can we make a difference? What did you like? What didn't you know like so much? And see if it's something that's moldable. You know, and I think we're keen to do that as well. Simon's very, very sort of passionate about it, as we all are. And I mean, he does encourage the bands to talk to him and actually ask for feedback on his opinion. It's not saying that he's always right, but, you know, it's an opinion I think that's very respected. So, you know, do ask and sort of push yourself on that.
Love that. I love that approach. Yeah. Obviously, Bloodstock, it's a full-time job for yourself as well. So it's not just something that you throw together overnight. Do you get to go to any gigs, like, you know, unsigned, signed bands? And if you've been to any gigs where you've gone, I love that band and I want them to play Bloodstock?
Yeah, I mean, we try and get as much as we can. Vicky, to be fair to her, does go out quite a lot. Simon goes to quite a lot of shows. You know, I go to as many as I can get to. It isn't anywhere near as many as I want to go to. But it's difficult, again, with family and kids, and sometimes as well getting that free time to get out. But, you know, Vicky's fortunate enough that she's, wherever she can do, I mean, she's not been to a gig since February and is gutted about the fact she's not been to a show. So we try and get to as many shows as we can do. Simon will go to as many of the Metal to the Masses as possible, as will Rob and Lee and Lisa within our own camp that sort of get out there and see bands. And we also try and do the same thing ourselves, you know, because, again, it's important to see not just a band competing in a competition, but a band just can play normally, you know, without any end goals, because ultimately, you know, you get to see that sort of live drive and the passion and, you know, how much do they really want to be a band? How much do they really want to be a big band? And what can they do? And I think sometimes when you pull the competition away from them, with respect that it's not about competing, it's just about playing, they're relaxed a bit more. So sometimes you can get a bit of a better performance when, how does it say, there's nothing to play for. You know, the bands are in their own element and they're enjoying themselves. And I think that's kind of important to see. So yeah, wherever we can do, we do like to try and sort of see as many shows as we can. I mean, I've been to lots of, you know, different shows where you think, yeah, that band would be brilliant on Bloodstock and whatever, but that is just my opinion, and it needs to be a general consensus that, you know, Vicky and Simon and Paul and Rachel and myself, we all kind of agree, because we get a lot of people asking to play, and we would love nothing more than say, yeah, all of you come and play, it'd be brilliant. But we'd have a festival about 6 weeks long, you know, 19 stages. It would be amazing. But we've only got so many slots, so we sort of try and balance it as best as we can. But it is important that we give as many new blood bands the opportunities we can. So I think next year there'll be 45 plus new blood bands at Bloodstock over the weekend. So, you know, it's a fair old chunk of the bands.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the last interview that Ian and I did was with a guy called Pete K. Malley, and Pete does comparing and emceeing for some of the festivals and tours and all that. And one of the questions we asked him was, you know, what in his opinion was the difference? What did a band have to do differently from playing in a stage in a venue to playing a festival? And he came up with his answer on it. What would you say, you know, from a performance perspective, what do they need to take into consideration that they may not have come up against before? This is aimed obviously at the guys that's coming through from Metal to the Masses.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these bands that do come through Metal to the Masses have been playing sort of very niche shows, you know, in front of, you know, sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40 people. When they start hitting the Metal to the Masses, you know, a lot of these venues, certainly in the finals, they sell out. So you could have a venue that's hosting Metal to the Masses that's 100 people capacity. We've had them at 500, 600, and they've sold out at that point. So it's that stand back factor of overwhelmed, if you like, from the band's perspective, because they're not used to playing to a big audience. You then get to Bloodstock and you've got a couple of thousand people sitting in front of you, you know, with expectations to hear something new and different and you know, really sort of engaging. And I think it's almost deer in the headlights. You've got to try and really, I would say, just focus on one person in the audience and play to that one person. Forget about everybody else, they're not there. But just play to one person and relax. You know, the big thing is, please, God's sake, relax. We've seen bands so nervous before on the New Blood stage playing to these big audiences that they can kind of not play their normal show. And we know they're capable of so much more and do generally tend to deliver so much more. But it's on the day. It's all about the day. It's all about the moment. That is your moment to shine, and just relax and enjoy it. You know, you've got to enjoy what you do. If you don't enjoy it, you're doing the wrong thing. You're doing the wrong job. You know, so just relax, enjoy it, play to one person, and just put on a show. Have a laugh doing it. I think generally when people have a laugh and relax, naturally it's a more sort of fluid and enjoyable experience for everybody, whether you're watching it, whether you're playing. So yeah, just enjoy the moment.
Well, thanks for that advice. So that turns nicely onto the last question I've got for you, Adam, which is, what was the best piece of advice you've ever been given about the music industry?
Fake it till you make it. I think, you know, it's common, it's everybody says it, but it's so true. You know, I mean, we for years never thought ourselves really professional or were an industry leader in any way, shape or form, because you're up against your Live Nations, your AEGs, and, you know, the likes of Kilimanjaro have got bags and bags of experience behind them. And, you know, when we're a sort of a family, if you like, putting on what is now probably one of the, in our opinion, certainly one of the best UK metal festivals, you're always testing yourself and asking the question, are you good at what you do? And you always doubt yourself. But we've had sort of engagements over the last sort of year or so, and certainly during lockdown with a lot of industry internally, and it's allowed us to benchmark ourselves, and we've now sort of realised actually we kind of do know what we're doing to a degree, probably more than some others. I'm not going to name any names, that's not fair, but it's allowed us to sort of sit back and think, yeah, actually, okay, we're doing all right, we're doing okay. But it is critical we remain grounded. You know, we can lose touch with things very, very quickly. And I think if we put ourselves on a pedestal of being bigger or better than we are, we're going to fail. And I think it's just so important that we just keep grounded and just keep doing what we've always done. I think if we do that, hopefully we'll have another 20, 30, 40 years ahead of us as well. So
I think the thing is you obviously understand the importance of the customer experience.
It's everything.
I think too many companies, businesses, whatever you want to call them, promoters that forget about that have lost the soul and lost the plot. And I think that's probably part of it.
Yeah, I think you're right, because ultimately it's about delivering what I would expect to have delivered to me. If I'm going to an event, I want a great experience. I want great beer. I want clean toilets. I want an atmosphere that makes me enjoyable stuff, that doesn't make me feel threatened. I just want a great weekend. So that's why we're very, very conscious to make sure that we aren't just sitting at a desk in an office, for the whole weekend that no one sees us. We're constantly out in the audience, walking around, engaging the feel, the atmosphere, the experience. And if something's happening we don't like, we can very, very quickly affect a change. That's not working, get it changed. And the team around us are of the same thinking. So everybody jumps on it very, very quickly. But that without the fans, you have no event.
Yeah.
Without the bands, you have no event. You can book whoever you like. If there's no events coming up, you're going to have a very big hole in your bank. So, yeah, it's all about the fans for us, definitely. And I think it always will be. And it needs to be. It needs to be.
Well, all I would say is that if everybody else had that same attitude, I think the metal and the rock scene would be a lot stronger than it is. And we need more people like you guys to think the way that you do in order to break through that glass ceiling. Because quite frankly, we see metal bands now, like you alluded to before, the new ones coming through, or hard rock bands coming through, and people say, oh, they're the band that's going to make it. But what is making it really for them? And
exactly.
We as a business need to wake up, smell the coffee, stop deluding ourselves, and remember we have to go out there like we're trying to do here, bring through the next generation like you do, but also bring in the next generation of fans by getting in front of them and showing to them what music, metal music, what hard rock music is all about.
Yeah, no, it's massively playable, but it's about fans going to venues. Support the venues. I mean, the venues need help now more than anything. They've not been able to do anything all year, and like us and like a lot of the industry, have kind of had our annual earnings wiped out in a heartbeat. So it's important that when we can, we get out to venues, not just festivals. Go to the local pub or whatever it may be. If the band's playing, have a listen. You never know, you might enjoy it. And I think if we can start doing that, the scene itself. Personally, I do think the scene is very healthy. I think the metal fans generally are a lot more engaging and a lot more accepting of something new and different than probably a lot of other genres of music. So I think we do have a good opportunity. But I'd like to see more of it, and I'd like to see the venue supported a lot more. In sort of, especially as we come out of COVID, I think it's going to be critical that we do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, there you have it. Adam, thank you very much for your time, both Scouser and Scot. Can't thank you enough for giving us a time in your busy schedule. It's been a great insight to Metal to the Masses, Bloodstock, and obviously we can't thank you enough, mate, so thank you very much for that.
No, appreciate all the support, and just looking forward to seeing everyone next year at the bar. I think
yeah, we'll certainly be down the front waiting for you. Sure, by the way.
Yeah, I'll come with a little special badge. I'll get you one, don't worry.
Thank you very much, mate.
Pleasure.
All that's left to say is we've been the Scouser and the Scot. So until the next time, hit that cowbell and subscribe. Thank you.